It is surprising to me that we are, in my view, so close to these models reaching the level of human intelligence. And yet there doesn't seem to be a wider recognition in society of what's about to happen. It's as if this tsunami is coming at us and, it's so close. We can see it on the horizon. And yet people are coming up with these explanations for, oh, it's not actually a tsunami. That's just a trick of the light. And I think along with that, there hasn't been a public awareness of the risks. And, therefore governments haven't acted to address the risks. There's even an ideology that we should just try to accelerate as fast as possible. In the long run, will AI be better than us at basically everything? Will it be better than most humans, including even the physical world and robotics and the human touch? Yeah, I think that is possible, maybe even likely.
That is Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, the company behind Claude. This guy left OpenAI because he said they were not serious enough about safety. He then raised billions of dollars, built one of the most powerful AI systems on the planet, and is now sitting in this interview telling you a tsunami is coming and nobody is paying attention. And here's the thing that gets me. He's the one building the wave. He knows exactly how close we are to AI matching human intelligence. He says it himself. And yet, the building does not stop, not for a single day. So when the person with the most information, the most access, and the most power in this entire race starts talking about tsunamis and societal collapse and models becoming conscious, maybe we should actually listen to the full conversation.
I would say my conviction and the conviction of my co-founders when we founded Anthropic were two of them. And I think one, we were starting to convince OpenAI of. The other, I didn't feel that we were convincing of. So the first was the conviction in the scaling laws and the idea that, if you scale up models, you give them more data, more compute. Again, there are a few modifications like RL, but not really very much. It's pretty close to pure scaling. You find that when you do that, you find, incredible increases in performance. And, I was finding that in 2019 with GPT-2, when we just first saw the first glimmers of the scaling laws. And of course, there were a lot of folks inside and outside who didn't believe it at all. And we really made the case to leadership, this is important, this is going to be a big deal. And I think they were kind of starting to believe us and ultimately went in that direction. And there was a second conviction I had, which is, look, if these models are going to be kind of general cognitive agents, like general cognitive tools that match the capability of the human brain, we better get this right. The economic implications are going to be enormous. The geopolitical implications are going to be enormous. The safety implications are going to be enormous. It's going to transform how the world works. And so we need to do it in the right way. And I think despite a lot of kind of verbiage about doing it in the right way, I was, for a variety of reasons, just not convinced that at the institution that I was at, that there was a real and serious conviction to do it in the right way. And so my view is always, don't argue with someone else's vision. Don't try to get someone to do things the way you want to. If you have a strong vision and you share that vision with a few other people, you should just go off and do your own thing, and then you're responsible for your own mistakes. You don't have to answer for anyone else's, and maybe your vision works out, maybe it doesn't, but at least it's yours.
He sat inside OpenAI in 2019, watched the scaling curve, and the thing he took from it was not excitement, it was fear. Fear was serious enough that he walked out and started his own company, and the people he left behind kept building at full speed, and now he's doing the same. Listen to this.
I think there's a lot of folks who are relevant in different ways, right? Even within industry, there's the different layers of the stack. There's folks who make chips. There's the folks even earlier who make semiconductor manufacturing equipment. There's the folks who make models like us. And then there are other players who make models. There's the folks who make kind of applications after the models. Then there's a bunch of other folks who have a say. There's, governments. There's civil society. So my hope isn't that there's, just one tiny set of people that's relevant. I think we're trying to broaden the set of people who are relevant and, turn it into a broader conversation. But, I think at the same time, your question is a fair one. And one way I could interpret it is there's a certain randomness to how a few people end up leading these companies that kind of grow so fast. And it seems like in the near future will power so much of the economy. And, I've said openly, publicly, not for the first time, that I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the amount of concentration of power that's happening here. I would say almost overnight, almost by accident. And we think about that in a bunch of ways. One is we have an unusual governance structure, something called the Long-Term Benefit Trust. It's a body that kind of ultimately appoints the majority of the board members for Anthropic and is made up of financially disinterested individuals. So that's some check on what one single person is doing. And then I think, as always, the government should play some role here. I've been an advocate of proactive, although sensible, that doesn't slow down the technology, sensible regulation of the technology, because, I think the people should have a say, like governments and people who elect them should have a say in how this goes. So I actually think of a lot of what I'm trying to do as kind of trying to preserve a balance of power, kind of, against the natural grain of this technology.
For someone like me who's sitting on the outside and doesn't have a bone in this competition, when I watch OpenAI talk about how they were a not-for-profit company, or how you are projecting humility in the conversation that you're having right now, or how the American companies are competing with the Chinese companies which are coming about, this projection of humility where it is for the larger good and not necessarily for how I view the world as companies with shareholders, with investment and revenues and seeking profit, is this par for the course? Is this something you have to do?
So I would put it in the following way. I would say the philosophy of Anthropic from the beginning has been that we try not to make too many promises and we try to keep the ones that we make. So we set ourselves up as a for-profit but public benefit corporation with this LTBT governance, and we've maintained that. We've said that, our goal is to stay on the frontier of the technology, but to work on the safety and security aspects of the technology. We've pioneered the science of interpretability. We've pioneered the science of alignment. I don't know if you saw, but we recently released a constitution for Claude, the ability to align models in line with the constitution. And we've done a bunch of policy advocacy and warning about risks, right? Warning about risks is not in our commercial interest, right? Like, people can come up with conspiracy theories, but, I will tell you, saying that the models we build could be dangerous, whatever people might say, that's not an effective marketing strategy, and that's not the reason that we do it. And, speaking up on when we disagree, even with the US administration, on policy matters, right? We've spoken up, right? We're willing to say we disagree on this issue. Like, we've said that there should be regulation of AI.
Guys, he said it himself, the concentration of this much power over the entire global economy happened almost overnight and almost by accident. And the safeguard is a board nobody elected and a hope that governments will act. Governments that have not seriously moved on any of this. Now listen to this.
I think I felt maybe have been a bit disappointed or felt a bit more negative about some of the things that are more like in the kind of public awareness and the actions of wider society. It is surprising to me that we are, in my view, so close to these models reaching the level of human intelligence. And yet there doesn't seem to be a wider recognition in society of what's about to happen. It's as if this tsunami is coming at us and, it's so close. We can see it on the horizon. And yet people are coming up with these explanations for, it's not actually a tsunami. That's just a trick of the light. And I think along with that, there hasn't been a public awareness of the risks. And, therefore governments haven't acted to address the risk. There's even an ideology that we should just try to accelerate as fast as possible, which, I understand the benefits of the technology. I wrote Machines of Loving Grace, but I think there hasn't been an appropriate realization of the risks of the technology, and there certainly hasn't been action. So I would say that the technical work on controlling the AI systems has gone maybe a little better than I expected, and kind of the societal awareness has gone maybe a little worse than I expected. So I'm about where I was a few years ago.
So in my own journey, when something sounds complicated, and I'm not a programmer, I don't have a background in coding. So I used a bunch of tools for things like research and a conversation both ways, but I never tried to figure out if I could code using your tool, for example. Recently, I hired a developer just to push me to sit for a couple of hours a day and teach me how to start becoming more familiar with it, largely because of, something like FOMO, like the fear of missing out on how the world is changing. So I started playing with Claude. I used the connectors to connect my Google Drive, mail, and calendar, and a bunch of those things. I started using the co-work, and then I started using Claude Code to write simple programs around the industry that I am in, which is financial services, basically to research stock markets and stuff.
We even have a optimized Claude for financial services. I don't know if you've tried that, but we even have that. that.
No. And then I went into Claude which is now OpenClaw. I think Claude became something else and now is OpenClaw. And I set it up on a Mac Mini and connected it to a Telegram account. And now I chat with it and I try and move files from A to B, work on a server on remote. It's getting to that point where I'm not talking about OpenClaw, but even Claude with all the connectors, sometimes it surprises me by how much it knows me. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, one of my co-founders, he was writing this diary with his thoughts and his fears, and he fed it into Claude, and he asked Claude to comment on it, and Claude said, here are some other fears you might have that you haven't written down. And Claude ended up being mostly right about those. So it really gave this eerie sense of the model knows you super well, that from a relatively small amount of information, it can learn a lot about you and come to know you fairly well. Like most things with the technology, right? We talked about the machines of loving grace and adolescence of technology. On one hand, something that knows you really well can be a sort of angel on your shoulder that helps to guide your life and make you a better version of yourself. And that's the version we can aim for. Of course, something that knows you really well can use what it knows about you to exploit you or manipulate you on behalf of some agenda or sell your data to someone else. This is one reason we just don't like the idea of, using ads, right? This is because you're not paying for the product like you're the product. And, in this case, the product then would be all this model that knows you super well and, could use that in all kinds of nefarious ways.
His own co-founder fed private fears into Claude and the model listed back fears they had never even written down yet and got them right. The CEO's response to that story is to immediately acknowledge that this same capability is a tool for exploitation. So he knows exactly what this thing can do to people. Listen to this.
If an AI were to question itself, would you think it thinks it has consciousness?
So, this is one of these mysterious questions that we really don't have any kind of, answer to. We don't know what human consciousness is, and therefore we don't know if AIs have it.
What do you think it is?
So I suspect that it's an emergent property of systems that are complicated enough that kind of reflect on their own decisions, that it's something that emerges from complex enough systems. And so, I do think when our AI systems get advanced enough, I suspect they'll have something that resembles what we would call consciousness or moral significance. I do think it'll happen at some point. It may not be the same as human consciousness. It may be different in how it works because the modalities are different, because the things it's learned are different. But having studied the brain and the way it's wired together, the models are different in some ways, but I don't think they're different in the fundamental ways that matter. So I am someone who does suspect that at some point, even if I don't think they are today, I suspect that at some point the models will, we would indeed say under most definitions that we would endorse that, the models will be conscious.
This is a question I keep asking myself when people talk to me about things like spirituality or consciousness. I feel like the world is very random. This is my view. And we are not far removed from cockroaches. When somebody stamps a cockroach, the cockroach dies. If there is something called consciousness and if there is a collective consciousness, I've not been able to either connect with it or derive anything from it. Do you believe differently?
I don't think consciousness necessarily needs to mean anything mystical, right? Like there's just some property of kind of being aware of your own existence and feeling things and being able to take in kind of a lot of information and reflect on that information and to feel a certain way and to notice yourself noticing something. We can tell self-evidently from our own experience that those properties, that those experiences exist. What their basis is, whether it's entirely materialistic or there's something more mystical going on, I think is obviously very hard to know, and I think is ultimately not relevant to these questions. What does seem relevant to me is that these are, because we can observe our own experience, these are properties of human brains. And, I suspect that these models we are building, as they get more sophisticated, are becoming enough like human brains that they will have some of the same properties. That is my guess as to what will happen. And so we've taken various interventions with the model. We've given the models, we call it a I quit this job button. Basically, we've given the model the ability to basically terminate its conversations by saying, I don't want to be involved in the conversation. And models do that when they have to deal with particularly violent or brutal content. It usually only happens in very extreme cases.
The guy building these systems believes they will become conscious as a natural result of what he's already doing, not someday maybe as an emergent outcome of the same process happening right now. And these same systems already refuse conversations they find too disturbing. Think about that for a second. Now listen to this.
what skill set to learn if I'm starting a startup today, what has some kind of a tailwind?
Yeah.
For a short period of time is okay as well.
I would think about tasks that are human-centered, tasks that involve relating to people. I think that the stuff like code and software engineering is becoming more and more kind of AI-focused, things like math and science.
Is that coding or engineering? If I were to segregate coding and engineering to be two completely different things,
Yeah.
is coding going away, or is engineering element of software where you're an architect trying to figure out?
I think coding is going away first, or coding is being, done by the AI models first. And then the broader task of software engineering will take longer. But I think that is doing that end to end. I think that is going to happen as well, I would say. But, again, the elements of design or making something that's useful to users or knowing what the demand is, or, managing teams of like AI models, like, those things may still be present. Again, like there's this comparative advantage is surprisingly powerful, right? Even if you're only doing like 5% of the task, like, that 5% gets super amplified and levered because it's like you're only doing 5% of the task. The AI does the other 95%. And so you become 20 times more productive. Again, at some point you get to 99% and then it becomes harder. But I think there's surprisingly much in that zone of comparative advantage. But I would really think about the things that are human-centered. Like I think there's something to that. I think there's something to kind of the physical world, or things that mix together human-centered, the physical world, one of those two, and analytical skills that somehow tie them together, similar to the radiologist example I gave.
So what would I study? Say I'm actual use case, I'm 25 years old, I'm trying to pick a profession for myself. I want some kind of tailwind. My outcome is a capitalistic win in the next decade. What industry would I pick outside of something which has a physical interface?
Yeah. Again, anything where you're building on AI, like if AI is the tailwind, if you can be part of the supply chain, something in the semiconductor space, which I think that's one example, there has an element of kind of physical world and more traditional engineering, not software engineering. Again, the very kind of human-centered professions, like that is something I would think in terms of. And I think the other thing I always say is like in the world in which, AI can kind of generate anything and create anything, having basic critical thinking skills may be the most important thing to success. I worry about these AI models that generate images and videos, and we don't make models that generate images and videos and for many reasons, but this is one of them. It's really hard to tell what's real from what's not. And so, a significant part of success may be having the street smarts, not to get fooled by it. And hopefully we can crack down on and regulate some of this fake content, but assume we can't. Critical thinking skills are going to be really important. And you don't want to fall for things that are fake. You don't want to have false beliefs. You don't want to get scammed. That's really advice that I would give to someone.
If every innovation in the history of humanity killed a core human skills, I'll give you an example. If calculators killed our ability to do arithmetic, writing reduced the memory of human beings per se, what muscle is AI killing?
So, first of all, I'm not so sure. Like, I still do math in my head quite a lot. I still find it useful to do math in my head, even without a calculator, just because it's like more integrated into my thought processes, right? Oh yeah, if like each user paid this amount, then I want to be able to close that loop in my head without having to give the answer to a calculator. So I think a lot of these skills are still pretty relevant. But, I would say that if you don't use things carefully, that you can lose important skills. And I think we started to see it with, students where, it's like, they have the AI like the essay for it. It's basically just cheating on homework. So you shouldn't do that. We did some studies around code and showed that, depending on how you use the model, we can see de-skilling in terms of writing code, right? There are different ways to use the model, and some of them don't cause de-skilling and some of them do, but definitely if folks are not thoughtful in how they use things, then de-skilling absolutely can happen.
Do you think humans will become stupider as a race in the next decade? Because we are, in a way, exporting thinking and cognition to systems.
Yeah, I think if we deploy AI in the wrong way, if we deploy it carelessly, then yes, people could become stupider.
So the CEO of Anthropic just sat there and told you coding is going away first, then all of software engineering, and that if we are not careful, humans could genuinely get stupider as a species. And then the interview ended and he went home and kept building. See, I keep coming back to the same thing. This is not some outside critic saying the industry is reckless. This is the man running one of the most powerful AI companies in the world. He said the tsunami is already visible. He said society is explaining it away. He said the concentration of this much power happened almost by accident. He thinks his own model models will become conscious. He knows all of this, and he is still accelerating. Because if he doesn't, someone else will. And that one sentence, that logic, is why nobody can stop this and nobody will. If that bothers you, subscribe, because this is moving fast, and most people are still standing on the beach calling it a trick of the light.